Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, be sure to check out our show on our YouTube channel. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
You know what scares Reviews Without Remorse most? When great directors slum it. And it shows. We totally lose control. And we like it. My name is David, and I'm trying to watch that temper of mine. And the man who was belted by gamma rays, Joe!
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
I was going to save that one for the next one. This is episode 113, and in this show we will discuss. It was Star Wars Celebration in Chicago this past weekend, and boy was there an info dump of Star Wars. Preview of the new season of Clone Wars, preview of the new video game Star Wars Fallen Jedi, preview of the Mandalorian TV series, and a teaser for Star Wars, now titled The Rise of Skywalker. And that's pretty much the news today. And then, a cavalcade of, as Joe and I tackle Ang Lee's first, and to date last, attempt at a comic book movie, 2003's Hulk. How you doing, my man?
I am good. I am very good, and I am excited to talk about the topics at hand. It's Star Wars Palooza today.
Yeah. And hey, we might not be completely negative.
Yeah, this is true.
So let's get on it.
I'm not coming back.
You are making a mistake.
Okay, we're going to cover the big stuff, I feel, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like the big stuff is the first bit of Mandalorian TV series info and the trailer. So I think we could just cover like Clone Wars and Fallen Jedi pretty quickly.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. For me, I have watched the Clone Wars since the beginning, and I found the new trailer extremely exciting, and it made me very much looking forward to the new season. Heck, that alone, that new season of Clone Wars is enough that it could convince me to go on the Disney Plus service, but we'll get to that in a minute. I know you haven't followed the show, so I'm sure to you the trailer was, well, the animation looks good.
Yeah, kind of. And I did sort of, it was funny. I felt like with all the stuff about the new Star Wars stuff, you know, I was thinking about how long it's been since I kind of visited the world of the prequels. And, you know, I watched this, and it kind of made my heart break a little bit because I was like, you know what? They really did set up a nice world for things to happen. I mean, it's not a bad-looking universe by any stretch. So it is sort of depressing that we got very, you know, it doesn't need a lot of comment, but the prequels were lackluster. But again, the world that it exists in does have a lot of potential. So I do see a lot of potential in this show.
I feel the show had a great... I think it really did exploit on that potential, personally. I found it to be a very... And granted, now, this show originally suffered, at least for me, and I think to a lesser extent for you, because it basically replaced this Genndy Tartakovsky version of the Clone Wars, this animated version of the Clone Wars, which was just phenomenal.
Yes.
Beautiful. Wonderfully animated. Excellent action. And, you know, by the guy who gave us Samurai Jack, so the frickin' sword fights were just outstanding. And then, they just, completely ignored that and went with this. So I went into this show with a huge chip on my shoulder, like, oh, how are you going to beat this? But they actually built a lot of great depth of character, not just in the main cast, not even in just giving you what you've always wanted in the friendship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, but they actually gave the clones a hell of a storyline, too. Like, the clones from this series actually have people that, are huge fans of them. Like, do you know who Captain Rex is?
No.
Well, everybody in Star Wars fandom does, because he was one of the clone captains on that show that everybody loved.
Okay.
Yep. So, seriously, it is a good show. You should definitely check it out at some point. Maybe once it's on the Disney service, you might just, it's on currently all the episodes are on Netflix right now. I say give that a go.
All right, I just might. Yeah, it does look pretty good.
Wasn't always like this. But now, there are 3 rules to survive. Don't stand out. Accept the past. Trust no one.
Now the next one, this one's more for me, because I am the gamer. They did a preview of the video game Star Wars Fallen Jedi. Now, Star Wars video games lately have been kind of dicey, but this one's going to be legit. This one is being developed by a group of developers called Respawn Entertainment. Now, Respawn Entertainment is a splinter group. Do you know the Call of Duty games?
I know of them, but I haven't played.
Okay, so basically, the people that made the first Call of Duty games, the really, really good first Call of Duty games, left Activision and built their own company called Respawn Entertainment. Respawn Entertainment then created 2 amazing games called Titanfall and Titanfall 2. Now, Titanfall 2 is seriously the best single-player campaign in a video game that I have played in the past 5 years. So these are the guys that are making this game, and from the look of the game, it looks like you are a fallen Jedi. It looks like there's going to be some wall running. There's going to be some force learning. It looks like there's going to be some lightsaber stuff. I personally, I like the look of the story, and I'm excited for the game.
It's got a pretty. It looks great. I mean, I still sort of marvel at where these games are today. I mean, it's like you're playing a movie. But yeah,
in most cases it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I thought this really looked spectacular, and again, the story, the story that comes through in the preview, it really does have a lot of great depth to it. So yeah, I'm not really into the games, but this looks story-wise, I feel like it's got some potential.
The Beskar belongs back into the hands of a Mandalorian. It is good to restore the natural order of things after a period of such disarray. Don't you agree?
Alright, let's get into some meat. So, they didn't actually show this outside of Celebration, but this is the internet. Somebody put it up there. I managed to find a clip of the entire presentation of The Mandalorian, scenes from the show as well as a trailer, and I shared it with you, my friend.
You sure
and
did.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
I thought it looked awesome. I was really, oh my god! I think this could be the post original trilogy event that we've been kind of hoping for. And I love the fact that it takes place after Return of the Jedi.
Only like 5 years after Return of the Jedi. What a great time frame to exploit, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like we never went there. And I find that to be sort of strange. I've always felt that would be, what's happening in the universe post the Empire. I find that time period to be very worth exploring. And the creative team behind this, wow, does it look good. Some of the scenes that we saw look great. The overall tone looks great. It doesn't look like, it definitely looks pretty grounded. It's not, light and funny. It looks relatively serious and straightforward. I love the actors in it. I thought
Carl Weathers,
right? Seriously, I haven't seen him in ages. Carl Weathers was in it. I thought the scene with Werner Herzog was interesting too, and I thought he's a very great, right? Isn't he a great actor to put in one of these shows, because he just sort of has that kind of weirdness to him, that weird presence that he's got.
And that voice, man. Oh my God, that voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's very compelling. So I thought the whole thing looked really wild. And I did catch, by the way, there was like another. I don't know if you saw this one. I'm sure you probably did, but it was not so much the clips from the show that we saw, but also like a little, like a little sizzle reel with interviews with Favreau and some people, and a couple of the directors that are involved.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow. I mean, they even have Taika Waititi doing an episode.
Yeah. Not only is he doing an episode, but he's actually also a guest star. He's playing a part.
That's great.
So,
I mean, seriously, the creative team looks very competent. I love what they're doing with it.
The style is beautiful.
It really is too. And bringing in certain characters that were kind of, little just sort of hanging out in the background characters that are going to actually sort of do something. I'm hesitant to name names because I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's a spoiler, but boy, does it look good.
I agree, man. It's funny. The service, like I'm enjoying the idea. Like they announced that for the Disney Plus service that they're going to do a Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show, which I'm kind of curious about. And that was kind of like, Clone Wars is kind of the This sold me on the Disney Plus service. I want to see this show.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. It could very well get my money as well. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll do like I did with YouTube Red and just kind of pay for 1 month, burn through whatever show I want to see, and then cancel it. But yeah, this looks pretty damn good. I'm definitely excited for this one.
Me too. Oh, by the way, side note, don't forget, next week, Season 2 Cobra Kai.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I said it. So they're going to get my money again because I will be there.
We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight.
The Rise of Skywalker. Now that's an interesting title.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, because who could be Skywalker? The only Skywalker that's going to remain would be Kylo Ren. Ben Solo is technically a Skywalker.
True. But
that aside, let's push that aside for a moment. Okay. What was your impression of this trailer? Now, granted, just as a reminder to the audience, people who have no idea, who have not heard this show before, Joe and I, we have feelings when it comes to the current condition of the Star Wars movies, especially, Force Awakens and Last Jedi. So, to say that Joe and I probably went into this trailer with our arms crossed in front of our heads, in front of our chests, and a huge ass chip on our shoulder and a impress me look on our face. This impression is meaningful to me. Joe, what did you think of the trailer?
Well, there's good and there's bad. There's ups and there's downs. The good is that it's kind of hard not to get the sense that somebody somewhere had the wherewithal to listen to what fans hated about Last Jedi, and I think they're going to just go hardcore in the other direction. The theme of this trailer seemed to be fixing things that Rian Johnson broke. The lightsaber has been put back together. Kylo Ren's helmet
Yes.
has been put back together.
Yes.
And I guess they're trying to just put Star Wars back together. And I, you know, it does seem like, on one hand, I kind of jokingly called it fan service, the movie, Episode 9, The Rise of Fan Service. In fact, I would almost go as far as to say, I think the guys over at How It Should Have Ended should probably get a writing credit, because I feel like all the things that they sort of fixed about The Last Jedi when they did their How This Should Have Ended, you know, I have a hunch a lot of that's going to get incorporated here. And if you ask me who the Rise of Skywalker is, I'm going to venture a guess and to say that there's going to be some lineage finally that, again, people were clamoring for after the first one, that they pissed away in the second one. So, no, your parents are nobody. But I have a feeling they're going to retcon that too and say, no, he was lying. Your parents are somebody. And I have a hunch they're going to retcon her into the Skywalker family. That's my guess. So again, on one hand, I was very excited for what I did see. I liked seeing Lando back in it. I liked, again, the attempt to fix things that had been done. On the other hand, I don't know if they can pull it off, frankly. I kind of feel like we are going to get the best. They're probably going to deliver the best possible conclusion that they can at this point, but the damage has already been done. So to try to end this in any sort of coherent way is really going to be a struggle. And incidentally, that also goes for the bit of laughter we heard at the end. Mm-hmm. Again, my feeling is they're really going to just try to go for fan service and go back to the basics to try to get to muster as much good feeling and as excitement as they can from Star Wars fans. Is it going to work? I don't know. So I will leave it at that and hand the mic over to you, my friend.
I was more excited than I thought I was going to be. I will say that. And there is something very infectious about about Billy D. Williams laughing in the captain's chair of the Falcon. And I knew it was fan service, but still, it's really, really difficult to not kind of enjoy the jubilation on the guy's face.
Sure.
And I found the use of the Emperor during the closing part curious, especially after Luke said, "No one's ever really gone." And which, by the way, you should see Red Letter Media's 5-minute tone poem of him just saying, "No one's ever really gone," with different scenes.
I did see that, yeah.
That was awesome, because those guys are awesome. But besides the point, I'd say it instilled a tiny bit of hope. Tiny little bit of hope. I'm not saying I'm looking forward to the movie. I'm still, I'm going to go into it as I described us, watching this first trailer with my arms crossed across my chest with the biggest chip on my shoulder. Mm-hmm. But I am open to the idea of them knocking the chip off my shoulder and making me put my hands against my chin in wonder. It would be amazing if they did. But it will never let me forget that basically The Last Jedi was a pointless movie. The only point of The Last Jedi is going to wind up being now Kylo Ren's in charge. That's it. That's going to be the only point of Last Jedi. You watch. That's my prediction.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I noticed that there was no Rose Tico in this trailer. I noticed, it really did seem like they're trying to distance themselves from the last film as much as they can. And JJ is going to do his best to try to get back the energy and excitement that he had with his first one. And
not to mention, he had a plan. He had an idea of how he thought the series should go that they just jettisoned for The Last Jedi.
Yeah, and I love that he's kind of more or less come out and said so finally. That, that there was, at least a loose plan, that was going to be, continued and put together. And he said, and someone else took it and ran in a different direction. So now what? I mean, and again, it's almost like not to kick a dead horse, but I mean, it's so funny that the more you look back on it, it's almost like Rian Johnson just had a a bone to pick with J.J. Abrams, maybe from high school or something, and said, I'm going to ruin your story. I mean, it just goes back to everything he did. He just sort of, like, everything J.J. did, he undoes in the next one and says, there you go. Take that. Work with that. I dare you. And incidentally, by the way, I'm also hearing that I guess the episode 9 takes place at least a couple of years after The Last Jedi, which I think makes a lot of sense, and that was probably pretty smart because, again, I mean, the rebellion or whatever was completely decimated in The Last Jedi. I mean, I joked about it when we talked about it. I said, if your side of the war just went home in a school bus, you're done. There ain't no more war. You've lost. So so to try to set it a couple years later, at least gives them a chance to kind of, recoup a little bit and lick their wounds and try to get back on track. Get some more people, get some more soldiers or whatever, because again, you ain't got no Star Wars anymore if you don't have a side to fight the war. So
very true.
So again, I do see that they are probably making the best possible choices going forward. So I do have some level of faith that they can at least deliver something that is reasonably coherent and something that will be enjoyable to watch. Again, as far as trying to come up with a conclusion to a trilogy and frankly to a 9-part series. I mean, again, people kind of forget this is the last trilogy in a series of 9 films. So this film has to cap it all. It's not just 3 more Star Wars. It's supposed to be connected. You had the first 3, then you went and did the prequels, which again, was the story of Darth Vader, which was the story of Ben Kenobi, et cetera, et cetera. This was supposed to be the extension of that. And they kind of treated it like, forget all that and let's just focus on these characters and do something fun. Okay, but it really was supposed to be a 9-part series with some sense of a coherent story. So, again, is there any way at this point to sort of tie it all together? I don't really think so. And that's just sort of my prediction. I don't see how they can do it. But they might be able to give us a reasonably good story, something that Star Wars fans will enjoy and say, well, it was nice to revisit the world for a while. So again, I'm going to go in with with tempered expectations and hope for the best.
Me too. Oh, by the way, the only other person that wasn't in the trailer besides Rose Tico, R2-D2.
You know what? I noticed that too, and frankly, I'm not really thrilled with Dio already. The new droid that looks like a dog. I know it's Disney, and I gotta just sort of accept a lot of that. But I wonder why that is. But I guess we'll find out.
Bruce? What happened to you last night?
I had the most vivid dream. It was like being born, coming up for air, the light hitting my face, screaming. My heartbeat was like boom, boom. Betty, what's happening to me?
I don't know.
I don't understand this.
Bruce Banner, a genetics researcher with a tragic past, suffers an accident that causes him to transform into a raging green monster when he gets angry. Written by John Turman, Michael France, and James Schamus. Story by James Schamus. Based on the character created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Directed by Ang Lee. Hulk.
Just Hulk.
A dull title for a dull movie.
I think the rage is triggering the transformations.
That's it. That's my review. Good night.
Yeah. I tell you what, it was funny. I remember the movie being pretty lame. But I honestly forgot just how unbearable it is. Actually, you know what? I'll say it differently. I didn't forget. I remember it being pretty lame, but I thought it was reasonably watchable. Like even if you're sort of watching it like a car wreck, I kind of felt like it was, almost so bad it's good kind of a thing. And I thought I remembered.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
no, it wasn't.
I thought I remembered, that it was kind of just okay and just all right, but forgettable. But wow, when I watched it this time around, boy, did I struggle to get through it. This was just unwatchable.
You know, in the movie's defense, we are 16 years later, and we have a Marvel Cinematic Universe that's been firing on all cylinders and getting its characterizations correctly. So, and this movie was the follow-up to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, okay? And that is a spectacular movie. Highly recommend it. Everybody should see it. That's where I'll leave that. This was Ang Lee's follow-up. Of all the things you could possibly follow up with, this is what you follow up with. This is an art house comic book movie that is so far up its own butt, it becomes a parody of itself. And you know what's the weird part is as I'm watching it and everything like that, it's all dialogue-y and talky and so on and so forth. A part of me is like, you know, there's some elements here very reminiscent out of the comic. And in fact, when this movie came out, there was a retcon to the Bruce Banner character that he was abused by his father. His father did experiment on him, and that was one of the reasons why he is the quote-unquote only Hulk there really is in the world. That was a comic story that actually happened, and that's what they basically based it on. And I kind of felt like there was some good material here that they could have done something with, but it becomes obvious that the director and the writer were more in love with the abused, tortured soul of Bruce Banner than they were ever, you know, looking for telling the story of the Hulk. The Hulk is just a means to an end to them, and yet he is the title of the movie. Why not just call the movie Banner? Banner has most of the screen time.
Yeah.
And he gets most of the character arc and everything like that. It just, you know, I watched this. It took me 3 days to watch this movie, Joe. 3 days to watch this movie.
You beat me by a day. Honestly, it literally took me two days to watch it because I literally, Mary and I watched this together, and
she's still with you?
She might not watch any more movies with me.
Don't blame her.
No, and I even warned her beforehand. I said, you know, just so you know, this one's pretty much a stinker. Like this, you know, if you don't want to watch this one, she's like, no, she was fine with it. She's like, you know, she's always a good sport, so she said sure. We got about 3/4 through. I was struggling to keep my eyes open. I just was really just struggling badly to keep up with it. I finally just said to her, I said, do you want to call it quits for today? She said, yes, thank you. Like, we just had enough, and we just could not do it anymore. I went back the next day and put it in again. Literally, again, can't keep my eyes open. I'm not exceptionally sleepy or anything. But I could not stay awake, and I kept having to rewind a little bit, go back. I'm like, oh, brother, what did I miss? Let's go back a little bit. This was an ordeal.
It was slow torture. It really, really was. There's nothing visibly arresting happening on the screen at any given moment. I feel like the actors tried. I feel like Eric Bana tried his best, and I feel like Jennifer Connelly tried her best, and even to a lesser extent, Nick Nolte. And God, you know, gotta love original Thaddeus Ross there,
Yeah.
Sam Elliott.
Yeah,
I enjoyed his. There's some decent, you know, performances going on here, which I kind of felt like just got wasted for nothing, for really nothing.
yeah.
You know, I mean, save for Josh Lucas. Josh Lucas's Talbot was seriously the most
Oh my God, yeah.
villainy, like comically villainy that I couldn't even take it. All right, but everybody else I thought did a pretty good job with what they got. But what we had here is the sum of an empty something. Like, it didn't know what it wanted to be. Schizophrenic is the word that I kept thinking to myself.
Yeah.
And maybe that was the point, because, I mean, that is the duality of Hulk and Banner. Maybe that's what he was trying to do. But, you know, when a comic book movie decides to rely on comic book style transitions to keep their audience going,
Oof.
that's not a good sign.
No. And that was, I mean, that got so old so fast, too. It was just, I mean, it got to the point where just they were doing these weird transitions back and forth just for a simple conversation. Like, it wasn't even interesting the way they did it. It just seemed like just a nonsensical exercise, and look what we can do. It contributed nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing.
No, it was all empty. It was like, you know, Ang Lee in an interview, not that long after, said, well, you know, I don't really read comic books. It's like, no kidding.
Yeah.
We figured that out.
Yeah.
You and Tim Burton should go off together and make a movie or something. I don't know.
Oh my God. And that's, you know, and that's one of the frustrations too, because I specifically remember when it was announced that he was going to do this film. And he was quoted somewhere saying, well, look, I don't know how to do a comic book movie, but I do know how to do a human drama or something to that effect. And I remember kind of perking up thinking, all right, okay, that sounds interesting. I can live with that, and let's see what he does. Mm-hmm. Then when you see it, and again, I mean, you nailed it when you said that this movie is so far up its own ass. It's just sort of shocking. Like it becomes parody. It's so self-important and so self-righteous. But the kicker is, for something that wants to be a drama, good Lord, the dialogue in this movie is awful.
And repetitive.
And so on the nose. There is no subtext whatsoever. Like you said, the villains are mustache twisting villains, and I mean, just every bit of dialogue is just so expository. You know that the dialogue is bad when characters are telling each other things that you know that they already know. Mm-hmm. Like, why are you telling each other that? Just so I can get it. I get that you need to, you know, I know that there needs to be plot exposition, but you can do it in a way that's interesting. Just reciting off facts to each other that you already are aware of is not good dialogue. So I was watching that and just thinking, and plus they're whispering all the time. I can't tell you how many times I grabbed the remote to raise the volume because everybody's whispering. Like, again, just this soap opera level of drama, you know, like oh, we're gonna be all whispery and stuff and whatever. No. I mean, sure, it takes a lot of work to make a movie about the Incredible Hulk and make it boring.
Very much boring.
Like shockingly boring.
I feel like the most exciting parts in this movie when I was watching it were the actor that they got to play the young Sam Elliott was like, holy smokes, a clone.
Yeah.
That was exciting to me. The other exciting point to me is Bruce Banner's mother. I recognized her immediately. It's like, holy shoot, that's Mike Wheeler's mom from Stranger Things.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, I would not have caught that. Good for you.
Yep. Well, yeah, because she has blonde hair in that show. But yeah, no, I recognize the face. Yeah, Cara Bueno.
Oh, that's interesting.
No, and I'm like, when the last exciting thing that happened in the movie has nothing to do with anything else, at least to me. A friend of my ex-wife's was actually in the movie. He was the security guard who Nick Nolte stomped. That's it. Those are my three most exciting moments in the movie.
Very good. Yeah, that's interesting. And incidentally, speaking of security, boy, you know, it's so funny now. I mean, you hit it on the head when you said that, you know, we are looking at this film through the prism of many, many years of wildly successful Marvel films. Right. So when you got the cameo from Stan Lee and Lou Ferrigno, which I thought was, I mean, that was pretty cool. But it was interesting, again, watching him walk out of the building, right? He walks out of the building and you just hear him kind of go, yeah, we really need to beef up security around here, especially at a place like this. And he just walks away. You went, oh, right. I weren't they supposed to be funny or something? Like, weren't you supposed to smile when you saw him? Like, why not give him like a line that's reasonably funny or something? Like, I thought like, Like, it makes you realize, like, wow, they really wasted his cameo there.
It was the early days of his cameo as well, but yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And it was definitely one of those things that like barely anybody would have noticed.
Yeah, right.
You know, because that was back in the way early days. I mean, the first real cameo for Stan Lee, I think, was I want to say the X-Men movie. In the first X-Men movie, or was it the Fantastic Four movie? I don't remember which.
Well, I mean, also don't forget, I mean, he's kind of been doing them before they were doing movies. I mean, there was the trial of the Incredible Hulk on TV.
That is true.
He's actually sitting in the jury for that one. So, I mean, he's done voice work even in the cartoons. So, you know, I mean, he's kind of been doing them sort of forever. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they again, the charm of them in the new ones is that they always kind of give him something funny. You know, like it's always the moment where you smile. I mean, it could be as simple as him sitting on a bus reading his script for Mallrats, but you can't not bubble over smiling when you saw him because they knew how to, you know, make it a treat. And here they just kind of went, oh, there goes Sam. There he goes. Look, there he goes. Bye. You know.
I looked it up. His in the cinematic universe stuff, his first real cameo was in X-Men. And, you know, again, this is 2003. This is before, you know, the general populace knew who Stan Lee really was. So I wouldn't expect them to make a big deal about it as they do nowadays.
Sure.
But yeah, it does kind of feel like a waste. But, I mean, think about it this way. I mean, he was a hot dog vendor in X-Men. He was just some guy at a fair in the first Spider-Man movie.
Right.
He was an old man that got stopped by Daredevil from crossing the street because he wasn't paying attention in the Daredevil movie, the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, the bad one. And then here we are in Hulk. So at the time, he wasn't even allowed to have speaking parts because then he'd become a SAG member.
Oh, right, sure. Yeah, I mean, the point I'm really getting at is it's just sort of indicative of how joyless and humorless this movie is. You know, like
it's terribly
where he
joyless.
just passes through and it's like, oh, there he is. Okay, done. Bye. And by the way, you know, it's funny because it was interesting that they had Lou Ferrigno in here, which, you know, again, nice, you know, cameo, and it's bizarre how good the guy still looks after all these years. But you know, it reminded me that when this film came out, it was the first live action incarnation of this character since The Incredible Hulk on TV.
Right.
And this is so wildly different that it doesn't even make a lot of sense to compare the two. But I remember going in thinking, you know, like, well, that was sort of my, you know, where I was sort of judging this against was because again, I mean, when I was younger, every Friday night I'm watching The Incredible Hulk, and it was just spectacular. So when I watched this show, I remember thinking like, wow, there were two really great things that they did in the Hulk series that they blew it here. One being the origin. I remember watching this film saying, isn't it weird? I mean, this is the origin of the Hulk when the actual gamma thing blows up, right? In the comics, it's like a nuclear bomb going off, and he gets caught in the nuclear explosion, and again, should have killed him, but it didn't. Here, it happens in the office. There's no actual explosion, no actual anything, just the thing overheats, and they just do this stupid camera trick of having him like the film go negative or just whatever, and before you know it, it's over. And it's like, wow, well, that was pretty lackluster. Nothing. The other thing I remember from the show that I remember again, and I mean every week you watched it, and at least twice in every show would be the Hulk transformation, right? And
yeah, the white eyes,
right? The eyes would go wide, and it's like, oh, and the music would kick in, and be like, oh, here we go! Like, I mean, you waited all week to see this, right? And and twice a show you're gonna see the big transformation, and then you know, slowly, and the clothing rips and everything, and before you know it, dun, 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 dun. I mean, it was awesome. We loved it, right? And then here, when he turns into the Hulk, it was oddly boring. Like, it was like there was no music cue, no. I mean, like the first time he does it in his house, I guess. Like
no, I mean in the hallway at the laboratory.
Yeah,
because he runs into his dad there.
Yeah, right, or something. Yeah, and all of a sudden, like, and it's
oh my god, that is such a sign of how terrible this movie is. We can't even figure out where the frick his first transformation was.
Well, yeah, I'm right. There was that one, and again, it was so weird because it was done so totally in darkness that you can't. And there was a lot of this movie that happened in darkness. So like I literally couldn't see anything, to the point where I was wondering, like, do I have to fix my TV? But the first transformation happens, and it just sort of happened, and it was like there was no emotion, no drama, no excitement, and then even when it happened later, it was like it just sort of happened. At the one point toward the end, when he's in that water tank, like, you literally just sort of see him, like, profile, and he's wiggling around, and just kind of getting a little bit bigger, and it was like, again, like how do you make this boring? How do you make that boring? I mean, the TV show in the early 80s got this right. I mean, they made it so much more interesting and exciting. The build-up was great. It was like, again, like I said, you waited all week for this. And here I'm watching the real... And it's dull? Wow, that takes work to make this thing boring.
You know what it is? Because in the show, they made sure that you had emotional stakes in the characters that he was transforming for.
Yeah.
Right. The original TV show was basically, oh goodness, what was that TV show from The Fugitive? It was like a comic book version of The Fugitive.
Yeah.
He would go around place to place trying to stay ahead of Jack McGee, who was following around everywhere.
Yeah.
He would meet up with these people. There'd be some kind of like, A-Team-esque problem. And this is before there was the A-Team, so this is very important. And he would get involved. He'd get involved emotionally. You would learn the characters. And 9 times out of 10, the transformation always happened at a moment where the character that he grew to care for was in extreme danger.
Yeah.
And, it had that exciting, like you said, that exciting music, and then that little stinger of ding.
Oh my god! It was. And the music was like that great music that it would hit a crescendo. It would like dun 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 dun. Like something has happened. It's really exciting. It's building up to like this fever pitch, and then suddenly, dun! It was like just when you couldn't take anymore, the thing would kick in and the eyes would go away. Oh my! Right, it was off the hook.
Credit to Bill Bixby, who
sold it every time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There were so many episodes, and every time he opened his eyes and just shook his head just the tiniest little bit, it's like, oh my god! Every single time.
Right. Oh my god, it was crazy. It was so good. And then you have Ang Lee's Hulk again. The transformation is just so weirdly boring, and then the Hulk shows up and stuff.
Then it's like a story being told by a 4-year-old. Well, maybe not a 4-year-old. Like a second grader. A second grader has stood up in the front of the class for his English project. He has to tell a story. He or she has written a short story. And the kid goes up, and I've made this comparison before with other movies, but boy does it really apply here. And then Bruce Banner wakes up. And then Bruce Banner rides his bike to work. And then Bruce Banner goes inside and tries to make things immortal. And then Bruce Banner gets hit with gamma radiation. And then Bruce Banner sees his death. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my god. Just awful. So, yeah. So let's talk about the whole Nick Nolte backstory.
The Nick Nolte backstory. It's funny. They don't mention it in the comics anymore.
I'm sure they don't. I mean, because it was awful. It was. I mean, I will say this. I mean, and I think you were alluding to this before, that there is something like Amazing Spider-Man did sort of the same exact thing when they did this whole thing about, the father experimented on you, and that's why it was you, plus the radioactive spider that made, and I guess it does kind of explain away, the idea that, well, then why can't I get gamma radiation? I'll turn into the Hulk too. I mean, everybody would be doing it if it was as simple as that. So you added another level of complexity. Okay, fine. I kind of get that. But yeah, but the whole thing about, I mean, seriously, going for this Greek tragedy of now Nick Nolte, because he experimented on himself, now the son is a certain way, and now he has to murder the son with a butcher knife. Like, the wife is going to sit there and take that? Yeah, okay, dummy. Like, that didn't go over so well. Like, so, oh my God, it was just awful. The whole concept of it. And then, like, later, like, it doesn't, I don't understand any of it, because then later when he actually does, I mean, I assume that the point is he's trying to kill Bruce Banner before he turns into something that would hurt people. I think. Then later, cut to today, Nick Nolte finds him. He's gotten the radiation. He's going to turn into the Hulk. And somehow he thinks this is great. He loves this and he wants more of it. And he wants him to turn into the Hulk. And I'm going to get powers too. And we're going to go crazy or something or other. I couldn't even really get my head around what exactly the point was. Because the finale is the two of them fighting. And
in clouds.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's turn it to lightning and go through the clouds. Okay, that really makes a lot of sense. But right, so now he's like, I want all your power too, and Bruce is like, you want it? Here, take it, or whatever. Something happens, and then Nick Nolte's just dead. I thought the whole point, Nick Nolte, was that you didn't want Bruce to grow up and become the Hulk, as if you could even look that far into the future to know that he would get zapped by gamma radiation to trigger whatever you've implanted in him. So all of that stuff, just like, I thought it was just so dumb, like so dumb and pointless and not leading anywhere. Just another excuse to make drama. Now he has a rough child. Now he has a rotten, no good childhood because his father was a rotten SOB, tried to murder him. But then later it comes to nothing. So it just, again, shallow and pedantic and just ridiculous. And by the way, that awful, awful scene where Nick Nolte says, I want to see my son for the last time. I'll turn myself in. So you loosely tie them up and put them in chairs, knowing that Bruce Banner can turn it. I mean, you know he's the Hulk. You know he can turn into the Hulk. So all Nick Nolte has to do is flick him in the nose, and you can have the Hulk on your hands. So why you would allow this to happen? Why they are not chained down or anything? So dumb. And then he has this awful, awful monologue about and humanity and to the point where I even think when he sits down, like after he does this whole tirade, this big soliloquy about it, and those people and humanity and yada yada yada, he sits down and he just kind of goes, blah, blah, like he just kicks his legs up a second, and just goes, blah. I watched that. I'm like, that had to be an outtake. Like that had to be Nick Nolte thinking that he had completed his scene, sat down, and then jokingly went, whatever, to be funny. And somebody decided to leave it in. It was so weird. It was so odd and out of character. I thought, I thought that had to be an outtake that somebody just left in by mistake. Because, I mean, again, Nick Nolte is trying to sell this as if he's totally serious, right? He totally believes all this nonsense he's spewing. And then he does that as if he kind of realizes like he's getting carried away and being silly. Like, I just, the whole thing is just baffling.
I have no idea what his real motivation is, Joe. At first it was, I mean, I almost would have taken the old, 40s and 50s trope of, I will show the world that I was right, evil scientist bull crap that they used to do. Remember from the old Fleischman Superman cartoons?
Yeah. Right,
it was always the scientist like, I'll show the world, I'll show the world.
Yeah. They laughed at me, I'll show them, right.
Yeah, I would have accepted that as motivation, but his motivation moved, like the 9/11 truthers move their goalposts every time somebody says, well, this and this and this. Yeah. Well, what about this? And it just, there was no real connection I felt at all for that character as a villain or anything like that. I barely felt the connection to any of these characters in the movie. I may have had more of a connection to the frickin' Hulk dogs. The ridiculous Hulk dogs.
What?
Than I did to any of the characters to the movie.
What is possessing somebody to say, you know what? We'll have him fight these like Hulk dogs, these big giant Hulk. Well, first of all, the motivation so dumb. Seriously, Nick Nolte again was going to murder his son because he was afraid to let this power loose on the world, and then he takes his dogs, blows them up into Hulk dogs to take out one little woman who you could have just kind of gone over. I mean, you stabbed one woman already, so you know how to do it. You could have gone over with a a knife and stabbed her too, if that was your plan. No, let me create 3 giant Hulk dogs that will somehow know enough to go to Jennifer Connelly's house and kill her. And by the way, the filmmakers said, let's make one of them a French poodle.
Just for the ironic look of it all.
Yeah, right. That's right. People are not going to laugh at that when they're doing the reviews of this movie. The big giant Hulk French poodle.
Here's another little plot hole. If he knows how to make dogs into Hulk-like creatures, why couldn't he have made himself into a Hulk-like creature? If that was his end goal. Look, I know how to make these dogs into Hulk creatures. I want the power of the Hulk. So
right.
I'm going to do this extraneous, thing that's going to turn me into a combination of Absorbing Man, and Zaz, but you already know how to do it. You did that with the 3 dogs.
Yeah.
What the hell is your problem? What are you trying to do?
Yeah. Right. I mean, like with everything else, the abilities
Talbot was a more
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. Yeah, but you're right. Like everything else, all of these abilities are subject to the whims of the script. So whatever we need him to do that moment, he can do, and yeah, it does not make any sense whatsoever.
Talbot had better motivation. Talbot.
Oh my god. That whole thing was ridiculous. Again, the comic booky stuff when Talbot blows himself up.
I laughed so hard.
Oh, it was so ridiculous. I mean, I watched that scene twice because, again, I had to go back and replay it. But the whole scene when they foam up the Hulk. Well, first of all, the idea that they made this foam that could hold the Hulk, even for a little while, I thought, well, that don't make a lot of sense. But
that was awfully fast science.
Oh, my God. But then the scene when he goes up to him to drill him, to try to, and then like his eyeball blows up really big. I was like, what is going on? And this Hulk it's like watching when Popeye turns into, like, when he eats the spinach, it's like, da-da-da-da-da-da, the arms, like, left arm, right foot, left foot. Yeah, all that weird stuff is going on with this Hulk. It was ridiculous.
I don't know, because they made it, in a weird way, they made it worse shortly after. Because then after this is the big chase, exciting scene that they showed off in the trailers all the time as, oh, this is going to happen throughout the entire movie. And in the end was maybe at most 10 or 15 minutes of this 2-hour and 18-minute movie that easily could have been cut down.
Yeah.
In many respects. But there's these chase sequences with the Hulk and these helicopters and these tanks and so on and so forth that were seriously, like, trying my patience. I couldn't get in. There was nothing, so vapidly empty. And then, like, at one point, he grabs a tank and he throws it, a couple of miles away, and he starts beating up on the other tanks and stuff like that. And they have to make sure, like a G.I. Joe episode, that they show the guy getting out of the tank.
Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah,
I was like, what the hell? This is meaningless. Yeah. Meaningless.
Right. And I love when the helicopters crash and it's like, but they just crawl out. You're right. I will say this. I did find myself when they finally get around to, well, first of all, I thought General Ross saying, show him the door, let him outside. We'll deal with him out there. I remember thinking like in the moment, I thought, oh, that's really smart. And then I got, no, that's not smart at all, actually.
Yeah.
Why? Wait. You're going to let him loose on the world as opposed to just keeping him contained underground. If you can't handle him here, how are you going to handle him outside? And you should just evacuate and lock the door or something or whatever. But I will say this. Once he's out and the scenes of him in the desert, and I thought him running in the desert and doing the jumps, I thought to myself, all right, now this is okay. I mean, it doesn't look great. The fact that he's like this glowing green is a little odd. Like I thought, they obviously, the CGI was not quite there yet, obviously. But I did feel like once he was out, once he was fighting tanks, once he was fighting, at least we were getting something. And I thought, well, all right, all that nonsense for this, I could have just watched this and gone home. And this is just okay. But yeah, again, like all that silly nonsense just to bring us to this, which is what people wanted to see anyway. The other stuff was just awful garbage, and it just felt so silly and out of place at this point. Like at this point, I was struggling to stay awake even for this, Because I was thinking, like, by that point, it was like any goodwill you had towards this movie was already spent a long time ago. So, you know, just who cares? And incidentally, by the way, one of the things I just couldn't stand was that the Hulk would get bigger all the time. Mm-hmm. Like when he first turned into the Hulk, and I was reading in this like on IMDb in the trivia, and they said like that they had designed him that he was like he would start off at 9 feet and then get bigger like to like 12 and then 15 feet or something. I mean, when he was fighting the Hulk dogs, I'm watching him walk around. I'm like, this dude is taller than the house. Like he's walking past the house and he's like the size of the roof. Like you don't think this was like a little much? Like at least in the Marvel movies, they knew enough to dial it down. And I mean, he's more effective in the Marvel films because you got him down to a size that makes some sense. Like he's comparable to a person. So it's like, so now you have some sort of, like scale is not exactly the word I'm looking for, but you can get a sense of how big he is in comparison to a person. As opposed to this, where now he's just sort of like just ridiculously bigger than a house, and like he's not a person anymore. So that kind of awe is sort of taken away because you just sort of made him as big as you felt like without even thinking about it. I thought that was just awful. I couldn't stand that, frankly.
It was something from the comic book. The angrier he gets, he's supposed to get larger. It was their way of making it so that when artists couldn't get his scale correct, it was the excuse. Yeah. You know?
Right, which seems like exactly what's happening here. They almost felt like they couldn't quite get it right, or this whatever moment, whatever. Well, he gets bigger. No, I don't know. Again, it seems like of all the things I'm complaining about, that one seems like a weird little pet peeve. But it really was just kind of driving me nuts. It was like all different sizes all the time.
Look at you. Off to college to be a great scientist.
Like your father.
There's something inside you so special. Someday you're gonna share it with the whole world.
Let's hit the gamma radiation.
Countdown started.
Nanomeds released.
Speaking of sizes, hey man, out of 10. We got to size this sucker up.
Yeah, and I will just I'm waffling between a 1 and a 2, honestly. And I really went into this movie thinking it would be closer to a 5-ish, thinking like, yeah, it's just passable, and it's a you know, your 2 hours will go and it'll be very disposable, but it'll keep you entertained. But wow, was this a struggle this time? I just could not get over how bad it was. And again, it wasn't even just the annoying melodrama. It wasn't the fact that it was this annoying soap opera level weirdness, but the fact that the drama was bad, the fact that the dialogue was bad, that the story was incoherent, that it didn't make sense, that people's motivations were just sort of all over the place. I mean, you barely get an introduction to these characters. You really don't. You sort of jump in, like it almost feels like you missed the first part of the film. Because you sort of jump in and you get like, you know, Bruce Banner doing his thing and Betty and like they imply that they've had a romantic past, but they don't exactly say why it didn't work out. And there's no reason. I mean, it's almost like they sort of jumped in the middle, acting like Bruce was already the Hulk and that's why he can't commit or something. But again, we don't see any of that. Then Thunderbolt Ross shows up, just sort of being the general, and he's already sort of on guard, like he knows bad things are happening when nothing has happened yet. So it all just sort of has this really weird feel to it. And even the stuff that takes place at the house, when Bruce Banner's a kid, he's a weird looking little kid, and they show him playing with these dolls, beating the dolls again at each other, and they kept flashing back to it, this like super sped up weird, you know. There were times when they would
foreshadowing.
Right. I mean, right. It was just, and there was times when they would do these like I don't want to say dream sequences, but like he's lost in thought or he's dreaming. They would show like the surface of Mars at one point. I'm like, what the hell is happening here? So yeah, I mean, this movie is just all over the place, and I can't really find anything redeeming about it at all. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and give it the 1, because I mean, if it is this painful to get through, that's it. I have nothing. It's a 1.
You know, maybe the only thing I like about this movie is the really feeble attempt to try to make the science of why the Hulk came to be seem plausible. Okay? That whole opening montage of him experimenting with, you know, the starfish and stuff like that, I kind of liked. And for a minute there, I thought to myself, as I'm watching the opening of this movie, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Maybe I was too hard on this movie. Because, you know, I kind of feel like there's a nice little element of science in here and so on and so forth. That went out the door after 3 minutes. It took 3 minutes for this movie to be like, oh, okay, I kind of forgot about this. This is pretty neat. To, oh my God, what are you doing? What is this stuff? Where are you going with this? Why are you doing this way? You know, there are directors that just fit their niche. I feel like Scott Derrickson fits Doctor Strange perfectly. Like, he just, you know, whether you liked or didn't like the movie, you could tell this man believed in this character and this product and really wanted to go with it. You know, the Russo brothers and the writers. I'm sorry, writers. I keep always forgetting your names, but you know what I'm talking about. You know, they took a decent opening with Captain America and they turned Captain America and they showed this is the Captain America that we love and we want you to see him. Turned him around from that humble beginning in the first Avenger to the character he is now. Right? The right director and the right writer who truly gets a character can take any type of drama, any of this superfluous stuff, like the father, you know, relationship and so forth, and they can make that work if it's in the hands of somebody who actually cares about the character. James Gunn is another example. Guardians of the Galaxy is not what it is simply because of those characters. It's because of James Gunn and what he believed in those characters. It is so evident to me watching this movie that Ang Lee had no idea what he was getting into. I almost feel like he did this on a dare or lost a bet or something like that. Because there is barely any of the passion that he shows in any of his other movies. Now, I understand that he did like the motion capture for some of the Hulk scenes, and it still didn't work. I still didn't feel anything for the character as he did it, and I felt nothing for any of the characters. And you're already going down a bad road with that. And when you can't even salvage it with an action sequence at the end, a huge action sequence and chase and so on and so forth, and the final fight between the Hulk and the Abomination and stuff like that, it winds up being some kind of existential whatever the hell. I'm not even 100% sure what happened there. I almost feel like he's yelling at me for being too stupid to understand, and yet I'm trying to yell at him and like, no, I actually do have the capability of understanding. Maybe you just need to tell the story better. I gave this movie a 3. Because I did kind of like that they were trying to add a level of pathos to the character. I feel like there's a story there that you could have told and could have worked under the right circumstances with the right creative team. But this wasn't the team. This was such the wrong material for this character in the way it was presented. It could have worked. It didn't. The special effects are god-awful. The acting, good, but the story, the characters, everything else is just a terrible mismatch. It is such a misfire of almost epic proportions that even remembering it back the way it was and remember, we both went into this thinking, oh, we remembered it not liking it, and we kind of came into it, it's like, oh, well, you know, maybe we misremembered. And for a couple of moments there, we both were kind of open to the idea of this movie, but then the movie just shit itself and showed its true colors, and it was like, oh yeah, that's why. So I don't even think that the time thing, the fact that we've had such quality comic book movies, matters anymore. This is a crap movie. You know, a movie can be timeless regardless of the change in time. Look at the first Superman, for God's sakes. There's a timeless movie. So yeah, no. This movie doesn't get a break from me. It gets the tiniest bit of break for trying something a little bit differently and going towards an art house type feel. But other than that, it's terrible. Don't waste your freaking time.
Well, I personally find that to be a very generous score, but I get what you're saying.
Well, let's be even less generous. Joe, who asked you?
Who asked me? Yeah, there is so much not to like about this film that I'm struggling to narrow down things. One of the things that I noticed was awful in this film was the sound design. The sound was terrible. Like the scene when he first turns into the Hulk and he bashes out of the building. I remember thinking like that the sound effects were so oddly empty. Like it felt like he was knocking down a couple of things not very big, and it did not sound like the explosion that you should have heard, somebody exploding their way out of a building. There were so many times where I thought the sound effects were just awful. Again, the whole weird, again, you wanted to give it some credit for trying to inject some pathos into the story. I find that to be, again, I admire your generosity there, but you're adding melodrama to a story that doesn't need it. I mean, again, the story should have its own drama. This is a Jekyll and Hyde story. There is drama to be had. So to inject this over-the-top, saccharine kind of drama that, again, has poor dialogue, poor writing, total lack of any sort of logic, you're just trying to try to prop this up to be something that's not, and failing miserably. Like, I mean, there's literally nothing contributed to the film by doing that. Where was I going with picking out one thing I didn't like again?
I mean, why don't you just say my Who Asked You is the whole movie at this point?
I mean, seriously, I'm giving it a 1, so I don't even, I
feel like you don't need to justify it, because I think there's too much to have to, in your mind, there's just way too much to fix that not one thing is going to make the difference.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, here's what I'll pick. I'll pick the French Poodle, the big Hulk French Poodle. Because I mean, to me, that's almost like they're coming right out. Oh, actually, no, I got another one. I'll say this. I had this one in the back of my mind and I forgot it. The French Poodle, and there's another one that is right along next to that. It's right after the awful monologue of Nick Nolte screaming about the with his arms up in the air and society and them and humankind and mankind, like that nonsense against a black background. Like they couldn't even like make an interesting set for that. It just sounded weird, looked weird, everything was weird about it, but the coup de grace was that when he sits down and then just goes that almost,
I have
to
no
me,
idea what that was supposed to be.
That to me was sort of akin with the French Poodle, because again, it's something that it's almost like I'm starting to feel now that Ang Lee is not only making a fool of all of us with this movie, that's him telling you as much. This is over the top and ridiculous and it's nonsense, and here's how I'm going to show it to you and make you realize that this is not, if you haven't noticed by now that I have no respect for this genre, that I am making this movie just to be funny and silly, well, there you go. There's the silliness thrown right in your face, and if you were getting at all excited by this, it's like it's almost like that Last Jedi kind of, he's laughing in your face saying you're an idiot for caring so much. So that those are the moments where I feel like he's just showing us his cards and saying, I don't even care.
Yeah, there is a lot. I mean, I already pointed out about how this movie is so far it's up its own ass that it's become like a parody. But you know what I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with what I wrote down as I was watching the movie. Brian De Palma called, he wants his split screens back.
Yeah. Good Lord.
It's like, what? You know what? Like, De Palma, when he uses split screens, there was a story aspect usually to why he was doing it. Whether you agreed with it or not is one thing, but there was always a story aspect to it. Here, it just kind of felt like, well, we're just trying to show that this is like a comic book. And I was like, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
It really doesn't make any sense in any of the shots that you did. You know, you could just montage. You did the montage in the opening to show David Banner trying to figure out, you know, how to do immortality or whatever the hell his ultimate goal was. You know, who the hell knows? But yeah, you didn't need the multiple cameras and the multiple. It didn't fit. It didn't fit with any of the tone of this movie. And every time it came up, it just felt like it felt like a poor magician's trick. Like you were trying to distract me from the fact that this movie really has no energy. And you're trying to infuse energy into the movie with these things. With the split screens. So yeah.
Agreed. And honestly, it really did nothing more but just show you how incredibly superficial the film is.
Now for the harder question, Joe.
Yeah. I do have one. I got one I can say.
I have one too. I'm pretty amazed that I do, but yes, let's go for it.
I have a hunch we're going to say the same thing.
I don't think so.
All right. Mine is very simple. It was the casting of Sam Elliott as Thunderbolt Ross. I thought that was not only was that great casting, in fact, I kind of wish, and again, I read something about how he wanted to play it without the mustache because his feeling was that military people, they don't really go for the facial hair very much. Mm-hmm. I kind of frankly felt that he should have left the mustache a little bushier, frankly. I would have liked to have seen that, the big bushy Thunderbolt Ross mustache, especially because it's Sam Elliott. And sort of as a part two of that, I thought the casting of the young Thunderbolt Ross, the guy who looks like the young Sam Elliott, that was pretty inspired. And that was kind of just dumb luck that they found a guy who looked that much like him. So
Agreed.
I will leave it at that and say that was good. And I thought Sam Elliott did a fine job.
He did do a fine job, and I am not going to complain at all about that. But yeah, no, I had a feeling mine is very mundane. I really liked the set design for the final base at the end. That open area with the little tracks and everything like that. I felt that the detail in that was really nice. The coloring was really, really nice. And I liked it. It was the only thing in this movie that made me say, wow, they actually put a little, value into this for what basically came out to maybe 10 to 20 minutes of film time at most. They built this giant area, gave it a look like it, was underground and had an even more sub-basement. And it wasn't, I came to find out, it wasn't like a pre-found place. This was a set that they built. So I'm just going to give them that much credit because anytime any movie uses something practically over, CGI trickery, I always like to give credit. So in this case, giving you credit for that set, I really liked it. When that scene happened where the Hulk was escaping and it popped off the top of that thing and it kind of went to the side, that was actually a thing that they shot. That wasn't trickery. They actually, had like a big styrofoam whatever pop up to give it that type of stuff you got to admire.
I'll give you that. But that's all I'll give you. Otherwise, it's awful.
I'm not going to disagree with you on there, sir. But the Hulk train didn't stop here. It took him a while, almost 9 years later, as a matter of fact, before they finally figured out, or did they figure out? Who knows? Because next week, ladies and gentlemen, and by the way, it was 5 years later. It was 5 years later that they did The Incredible Hulk. Next week, we will cover 2008's in-universe, in the MCU universe story for The Incredible Hulk. This time with Ed Norton taking the part, the third Bruce Banner in a live-action setting, following Eric Bana and Bill Bixby.
I think... Am I correct? Next week when we do The Incredible Hulk, we will have done every existing Marvel film.
That has ever been released in theaters? No. We're missing Daredevil.
I should have said MCU film.
The Incredible Hulk is a reboot. It is not. This movie is not meant to be part of the MCU in any way, shape, or form.
The Incredible Hulk is.
The Incredible Hulk is. The Hulk is not.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, by next week, we will have done all of the existing MCU movies, I think.
Yes, we will have hit every single frickin' one of them.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
And I'm looking forward to talking about that aspect of it because oddly it does play like a sequel to this one.
A little bit, yeah.
So it's kind of like I kind of feel like it's kind of got it's trying to have its cake and eat it too. It's sort of a sequel to this, yet it's not. So we'll talk about it.
Yes, indeed, we will, because there's a lot of interesting stuff happens with this movie, and we're gonna get into it.
You're ready.
All right, dude. Terrible movie, but excellent show.
Yeah, tough to get through, but fun to talk about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand, we normally record on Mondays. We kept pushing it back because life kept getting in the way and because, frankly, we couldn't finish the movie.
Honestly, truthfully.
So until next time, sir, have a great week.
See you next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page on patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Get him! Get the camera! Take it!
He won't give us any more trouble.
All right. Give me a hand.
Come on, smile for the camera, huh? Come on, yeah.